Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I picked an interview that I listened, I think 2 or 3 times, and it fascinated me. It's an interview that I will give a link to down below. It's a very famous podcast, Huberman Lab. I'm a big fan. And the interview is with Dr. Karen Parker. It's about autism, about vasopressin, about oxytocin, and generally it's about people that have this, I don't know how to call it, let's just say, because it's autism is such a mind territory that it's very difficult to put a label on it, as in what is autism. So let's just say that this interview is mainly about people that exhibit autistic traits, and it's trying to get to the root of it. I've taken some notes, and I must tell you that it blew my mind, some of the discoveries that Karen has made in the field. So at around 2 years old, 2 to 3 years old, specialists are able to diagnose autism. So how prevalent is it? So in USA, 1 out of 36 kids are being diagnosed with autism. I think that's quite a lot, I think. And autism is male biased. For 1 girl, there are 3 boys that are impacted. That I found that quite interesting. So girls with autism are a bit like more rare. So autism is a brain disorder. So the diagnosis is going to be behavioral. There's talks about DSM-5, you know, that big book that psychiatrists use in order to diagnose pretty much any mental disorder or brain disorder. So the question is, if autism is a brain disorder, the closest liquid or material that scientists can use in order to find out why autism is happening is the cerebrospinal fluid. I'll call it CSF in order to keep it short in my video. So CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. So it's very complicated to get that. And there are 2 factors that can predispose to autism. One is premature delivery of the baby. So severe prematurity is a factor for autism. And also there have been some studies, some think it's quite controversial, but there have been some studies about early prenatal ultrasound might be linked with increased autism. And why is this happening? Because when your baby is developing in your womb, cells are migrating in order to get to the right places, and the ultrasound, especially if it's prolonged ultrasound, like 1 hour trying to look at the baby, that ultrasound is going to affect the way cells migrate. I found that a very interesting hypothesis, for sure. There is a long talk between two very interesting substances, oxytocin and vasopressin. These are mainly what people are studying in regards to autism, to see, okay, is there a deficit in oxytocin? Is there a deficit in vasopressin? What if we administer, and there have been experiments with intranasal oxytocin and intranasal vasopressin. Amazing. maybe this, hopefully I'm not going to bore you with this kind of scientific information, but if we look at autism and brain disorders connected to impaired social cognitive ability, you will love 3 hours of science or 30 minutes of compressed science. So yeah, there have been experiments on mouse models. Okay, so when it comes to animal models, there are two, like, a lot of researchers are using mice, but the problem with mice is that they do not have a brain structure that is similar to ours. So the conclusion somehow veer into the direction of using monkey models, because their brain has a more similarity with ours. So for example, in autism, it's really hard to see if a mouse is autistic versus a monkey. And there are monkeys that are displaying like autistic traits, and scientists can incorporate that into their studies and make more accurate hypotheses and test them, you know? Okay. A debatable question, very intriguing: is there a subset of people that would benefit from oxytocin replacement therapy? It could be, but Karen says that her money is on vasopressin, and I can understand why. The science and the discoveries are just, they just blew my mind. They just blew my mind. And the problem with intervention in autism is the time. It takes a lot of time until a child gets diagnosed with autism, because you need a specialist to do that, and it takes a lot of years to form someone, to educate someone to be able to put a diagnosis. So it can take up to 18 months to diagnose a kid with autism, but 18 months is a lot of time to waste if that kid has autism, in order to intervene really, really fast, quickly, and efficiently. So vasopressin is made in the hypothalamus. Studies have shown that vasopressin has induced pair bonding with females and paternal care. There have been some studies on voles, on metavoles, on really interesting, really interesting and fascinating. But blood oxytocin is not a biomarker for autism, but the lower the levels of oxytocin, the bigger the social difficulties. So in order to make a substance a biomarker for autism, you have to have relevant studies that show, like black on white, that this will tell you with not over 90% accuracy that the person that exhibits some levels of vasopressin is autistic. So this is why like using something as a biomarker has to be backed up by really serious studies. Okay. There's a talk about the monkeys, the studies done on macaques. If you look at the monkeys who spend more time alone, they have a higher number of autistic traits and diminished social motivation. So diminished social motivation means that some other monkeys try to approach them, but they do not engage. This is why, like Karen said, that a primate model is better than mice model. So I definitely agree on that, but it's not done in an invasive way. So the monkeys are not exposed to terrible experiments. They're just observed. It's through observation. That's just for the people that are into like let's protect the animals, let's do not do experiments on animals. So it's very like okay in my opinion. Yeah, so some mice tested, some meds tested on mice had really bad effects on humans. So thalidomide is mentioned. It was something, a medication used for morning sickness for pregnant women, but babies got born with limb malformation. It was a terrible thing. So this is why the models, the animal models, do matter a lot. It's of course a trial and error, unfortunately, because no experiment will manage to predict with 100% accuracy that there will be no bad side effects on humans when those meds will be taken by humans. Okay, so Karen had a spectacular idea. She was like, okay, so autism is a brain disorder, so we need the closest fluid to the brain in order to diagnose it properly and maybe find a biomarker. So I need cerebrospinal fluid, but there is one component to autism, that is social interaction. And to be able to predict autism, like to diagnose autism before that child would have any social interaction, that would mean to be able to take CSF before that child would ever have a chance to be interacting. So that's very early, like up to 3 months. So you actually need the CSF of newborn babies. That's an entire struggle in its own, but she managed to get in touch with another scientist that needed the same type of CSF, but for a different study. So imagine that there are studies being made by researchers all over the world, and they're studying different things, but maybe they need the same sample, you know? So Karen thought, okay, what if I could get in touch with someone that has the samples that I need already taken care of, like already taken, and I can just take that sample and just check the vasopressin level. Brilliant. I was hella like, oh, dang, brilliant. And she did found Joe Constantino, who had frozen samples of neonatal CSF. And Karen said it would be intriguing to look at vasopressin levels in the brain before the behavioral symptoms would manifest. So you wouldn't know if that baby has or is susceptible to autism. It's a newborn baby. So, and even more interesting, let's check those babies years after and see if the low vasopressin level predicted later autism. Okay, are you sitting well in your couch? Because the discoveries will blow your mind. So Karen, the studies have shown that the ones who got diagnosed with autism later in life had low vasopressin CSF levels. So Karen has an amazing idea. What if you can intervene earlier, put them on vasopressin compensation so they would have a different development trajectory? Oh my God. So I would make this mandatory to take this kind of CSF samples from any baby that just got born and just check the level of vasopressin. So yeah, this level could become a biomarker. So the oxytocin levels did not differ. So on the same neonatal CSF samples, the oxytocin did not show anything, but the vasopressin did. So this is why I think it could be a very sturdy biomarker for autism. Okay, so another study on rats have shown that acupuncture can release vasopressin, and there was also a study with vasopressin trial on children with autism two times per day for 2 weeks with intranasal, and there have been a lot of improvements. I don't know if you can get this in USA or in Europe to be able to enroll your child into this kind of trial. I do not know. It's very debatable because you know, parents can be reluctant to give their kids experimental drugs, and there are also some studies with psilocybin and MDMA. But the issue is, and Andrew made a very good point, that there are meds that are already used on kids with ADHD, like Ritalin and Adenol, that are amphetamines. So, you know, debatable and mind territory, but I don't know. I think it would be worth trying if the results show like severe improvement. So the kids who got vasopressin showed increased social ability. This was the parent report, the clinician report. They were on the same page. So this is incredible. Okay, I'm gonna get into a more maybe gross area of research, and that is fecal transplant. Yes, so I don't know if you know about this or if you have any idea about how it works, but there are trials with fecal transplant in patients with autism, and the gut microbiome is a real thing. So again, studies have shown that depression can be alleviated through this kind of transplants. That I remember watching another interview, maybe I'll do a talk about that, with someone said that the poop will be the new gold, like taking fecal material from really high achievers, like sports people, like famous people, like researchers, like really smart people, and turning them into pills, and to be able to change your gut microbiome by getting pills with fecal transplant from, I don't know, Bill Gates or something. That just blew my mind. It's a whole different area, and I believe this could be very interesting. There's also a talk about the vaccines. You know, someone published a paper that allegedly showed that vaccines could cause autism, but it was proven to be fake and rigged, and that person got bad reputation and got fired and, I know, excluded from the academia. But interesting, after that study, the preservatives used in the vaccines got changed. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there was a bit of truth in that. We'll never know because they're not backed up by serious research. But I must tell you that there are a lot of new approaches for autism that you will find about in this interview, especially about something about vagus nerve stimulation. It has also shown to have an effect in autistic people, and that kind of stimulator you can clip it on the ear. So what I would definitely retain from this very long interview with Dr. Karen Parker, that I invite you to watch fully, is the fact that vasopressin, I think, is something that will open the roads when it comes to dealing with autism from early on. I think early intervention is the secret. So when you have a baby, and if you are able to tap into that CSF, take the sample, and have a reliable biomarker that will tell you, hey, your kid is displaying signs of autism, like in the cerebrospinal fluid, like since birth, imagine the time that kid would win. Because it's one thing to intervene at 3 years old, and it's one thing to intervene at 3 months old through some therapy, you know, like with substances that would change that brain's chemical structure in a good way. So I think this is still a new field, and I am rooting for collecting neonatal CSF and maybe making it a mandatory and free kind of service for any newborn baby. Yeah, so fecal transplant and vasopressin compensation therapy are definitely promising. Okay, I really loved watching this. I really loved telling you about it, and hopefully you will watch the full interview that it's packed with science and interesting experiments and research, and yeah, it will just fascinate you, I hope, because it definitely fascinated me. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Bye.